Hey, PreSales Collective, it's your host, James Kaikis, and today I'm going to be joined by Halyna Semenova, VP of Engagement and Presales at SoftServe, a global IT service provider. The title of today's episode is called Raising Awareness of PreSales Internally. The genesis of this episode is that Halyna reached out to me because she was hosting a PreSales Talks conference at her company. I thought it was really unique and really interesting that she was doing that. And she asked me to be a presenter due to my work with PreSales Collective. And I thought it was really interesting. And when I looked at her agenda and what she was accomplishing, I was very impressed. I was like, wow, this is incredible. So we stayed in touch, got to know each other. I asked her to tell me about the results of the conference, and it was amazing. And it's quite interesting to hear what SoftServe is doing with what they call the pre-sales networks and their kickoff conference of PreSales Talks. I feel like pre-sales awareness is the core of what we're doing with the PreSales Collective. And many organizations do face internal branding issues around their pre-sales team or their pre-sales org. And so today's episode, we're going to dive into why Halyna decided to do this, how she did this, some of the learnings and takeaways, because I'm hoping that people hear this and go back to their companies and want to do the same thing. It's a really interesting episode. It's very unique, something that not many of us are doing. So I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, Halyna, how are you today?
Great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to have you on the PreSales Podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm excited as well. So I've been listening to your episodes for a while. So now I'm here.
The pressure's on today, huh?
True. Absolutely.
Well, it's great to have you on here. And I don't want to talk about too much of our topic today, but recently we've gotten to know each other due to an event that you had. So tell me a little bit more about what's kind of been going on at work when it comes to pre-sales.
Yeah, that's true. PreSales Collective brought us together, and I'm actually pretty excited after the event that we recently had at SoftServe, the company that I'm working at. So, right now, this time of the year, well, lots of things get busier. And just in November, we had this great event, which we called PreSales Talks, where you actually appeared as one of the speakers. Well, actually almost like the opening speaker. So yeah, it was exciting and very inspirational given for December and for the rest of 2020.
I love that. And I'm excited to dive into that today. But before we get there, I got to ask you, how did you get into pre-sales?
Well, and as usual, you probably heard a lot of stories already, and mine is no different. Definitely didn't major in technical pre-sales, so just acquired it on the way. I've been in pre-sales for the past 10 years, to be precise, and I guess that the way I got it all started with education. So I majored in marketing, but it was in Polytechnic University, and this blend of technical background and engineering mindset together with this customer focus, it actually gives you specific view on the customer needs and on the conversations. And well, I started exactly as you in the hospitality business, and then just by chance got at SoftServe as the customer support engineer, and it was back in 2004 or something, and the company was 200 employees in size. And I started as then from customer experience, I moved into quality control, project management. But again, it was all IT, it was all software development, and it was a little bit on the boring side, especially for a student. Once marketing and coding, slightly different animals. That's why I left SoftServe back then and started in a startup. And that was an exciting, all this early startups world. I did more with marketing and promotion of the technical services rather than implementation side of it. So I moved there, did some startup, and then years passed, and of course, SoftServe was also developing itself, and they actually grew to the size of more than 1,000 employees, and they decided to start this pre-sales practice. So they called me back, and that was an interesting combination of the skills that you actually get in this field, because it was not purely technical, and it was still utilizing all my marketing knowledge and customer experience focus. That's why, starting from 2008, the company grew. I still remembered all the folks who were there. I knew the services not just from the sales perspective, but also from the engineering perspective, because I was the part of those projects post-sale. So I kind of started post-sale, then marketing, and then somewhere in the middle is a pre-sales. So that's it.
That's a great journey. And it's so awesome to see that you were actually at the company when it was small. You came back when it grew 3, 4, 5 times. And now it's even 5 to 10 times bigger than when you came back to it, right?
That's true. And that's actually, as I'm saying, it grew not just bigger in size, but also more complex in the offerings, more complex in the expertise services that we offer. And this actually created this perfect moment for the pre-sales as the department to start. So it's not simple anymore. That's why you need somebody to connect it all.
Well, that sounds like a good way to segment into our theme today. Today's episode is titled Raising Awareness of PreSales Internally. And as you mentioned, one of your PreSales Talks events was fantastic for what I was at. And thank you for having me on. It was really a fun experience. But I want to talk a little bit more about the start, taking a little bit of a step back. So tell us a little bit more about the organization of SoftServe and what PreSales means within.
Well, SoftServe, this is not the ice cream company, first of all. This is the IT consulting and global software engineering company. And we are in the service provider business, which makes this a little bit different from the technical product engineering and technical product pre-sales. Our pre-sales organization does not do that much of the demos just because we are not limited by the existing products and portfolios and platform specification. We are pretty much in this green field where we connect the client needs to what is possible by the current technology. And not even that current. It may be anything outside the realm of possibilities even. So pre-sales engineering at SoftServe and as probably in other service providers is about doing a lot of qualification, a lot of discovery calls and workshops and sessions to help to understand the client needs to the point that you can connect this need to the particular expert or a team of experts, to the particular service or the set of services, so that you can eventually put up the proposal that actually addresses those specific needs that are not yet covered by the off-the-shelf products and platforms. So that's why pre-sales, you have to be this technology generalist, always understand on the edge of what's new, what's going on. You need to know the organization, you need to know different industries to kind of this connect needs to what's possible.
Thanks for bringing us through that journey. Understanding the disco and the qualification and the workshops is really interesting. In your journey, you obviously started pre-sales organization or started early on, and now it's expanded big time. So what is your motivation to help build the brand of pre-sales internally? Why are you spending effort raising awareness?
That's a good question. I actually believe that raising the awareness is not for the sake, or I would say not only for the sake of promotion of the successes that we have, but also to make sure that whoever is involved in this deal pursuit motion, into sales motion, we all speak the same language. Because as you can imagine, in all this high ambiguity, high uncertainty, and variety of, clients, variety of technologies, you can start speaking different language, basically, so that the organization is large, the level of uncertainty is high as well, and you can spend a lot of time to try to figure out what it is, our eventual goal. So I truly believe that pre-sales is this integration tissue that actually helps to connect, and not just connect, but actually translate in the same language what's happening in the client's world and what it is we can do for them. That's why the more the organization knows about us, the more they understand our process, activities, some sort of best practices, the more aligned we are towards the same goal.
It is really important that you speak the same language, right? Like that is something that really changes the customer experience. And that's something we talk about all the time in the buyer's journey and how educated people are. And so there's a level of expectation there. So, making sure that your pre-sales team is doing that disco and that qualification to better set the expectations down the road is critical, really.
Absolutely. This whole same language, especially if you're working in the global markets with global teams, that's actually becomes even the discipline of its own, how to translate and how to actually speed up all these different processes.
You've talked about why you're doing this and a bit of the motivation behind it. Did your pre-sales organization have a bad rap internally, or what were some of the factors of why you're like, hey, we absolutely need to do this?
Definitely not a bad rep. Our reputation is actually great, but only within the folks who worked with us. That was our major challenge. And you probably, well, you're working in the large organization yourself. So the larger organization is more difficult it becomes to share the knowledge, to make sure that whatever you're doing right is being done right in other parts of the organization. That's why for us, pre-sales in our organization is a little bit siloed sometimes. It means that deals where we work together with the account executives and delivery teams, customer success teams, they're definitely going better, more successful. But there were some other teams that did not sometimes engage us or engage us too late. So we just wanted to make sure that whatever is being done right, the other part of the organization is also aware about that. And you can imagine right now with this whole working from home situation, it also adds up to the challenge. It's not that we can gather together in some sort of leadership summits and tell stories how we win things or how we lose things. So that was the whole intent, not necessarily brag about how we do good, but also connect different stories and different parts of the organization to make them heard.
Beyond this event, which I really want to dive into, because I think it was an amazing event just from looking at your outline and your agenda prior. I was like, wow, this is really incredible. But what are some other things that you've done to address these challenges that you're mentioning or to spread awareness of the pre-sales organization?
We definitely did a lot of things internally just within my team. So we experimented with different team structure approaches and pre-sales practices, when you should engage us, when you should not engage us, all those different bits and pieces. The goal is that it's not about pre-sales as the org we have in our organization structure. It's not about our department of engagement team and navigation solution consultants. It's actually beyond that, because pre-sale may be happening even post-sale. Pre-sale may be happening somewhere we don't even know, with some new sales executives that are just being onboarded. That's why when we reframe the projects, that it's kind of the goal, that it's not just about us and our team, it's about the whole organization. We naturally, I would say, arrived to that idea of the pre-sales network, because a lot of people do things without even naming it this thing. That's why PreSales Talks was one of those events that actually we launched the pre-sales network with it. And pre-sales network is this virtual team, I would say, virtual network basically, with other people who are either interested in pre-sales or who are doing this in some role, kind of taking part in some pre-sales motions. So our goal was first, let's connect all those people, and then let's do some formal event that will, first of all, launch the whole series of the events, not the only one, but make sure that they will also understand and start to speak, the same language as we were talking about.
I want to ask you a very specific question. Before we get into pre-sales network and pre-sales talks, you had mentioned that your team came up with the idea of the pre-sales network. Was that because it was something that you were challenged with and challenged them with, of like, hey, we need to figure out the awareness? Or was it a little bit more like the teams coming to you and saying, hey, we feel we have a problem. This is an idea of how to handle it. Walk me through that.
Yeah, I guess it was both, because you imagine 2020 happens, right? Beginning of the year, we still had all those business trips. Then Q2, Q3, things get staler. Our business was still pretty busy just because, we never stopped, and all the pre-sales continued to run as a clock. But still, we were not sure whether this is inertia or this is the new real. We just thought that right now, the whole pre-sales world will look slightly different. It's not that you can pack your bags and go with a sales executive in the meeting face-to-face and help to do some pitch. It's not that you can gather the team and again catch the flights and start the workshop in the same. So it will be different. How different? We just thought that, and again, by saying we, this is the team effort, but they also spend a lot of time workshopping without me. So the thing is, that was the notion. Things will be different. How different? well, 20 people who know just about each other's existence and some smaller circle around them cannot figure out. So we decided, let's call the larger brain. How to call them in? Well, let's do this whole networking event. Let's try the virtual format, how it will work. Let's try to engage the whole company. And to be fair, this whole virtual pre-sales network definitely attributed to the team, because that was exactly as you said. One day they came and let's start that. And this is how it happens. So,
I want to give ideas and inspiration to those that are listening that are probably having the same problems, right? And want to bring it upwards on the chain. So let me ask you a very specific question, and then I want to dig into this. Is which one came first? The idea of the pre-sales network or the idea of the pre-sales talks?
Pre-sales network definitely was first because, we need a community. We need a community brain. We need to think about the scaling. We need to think about how to engage new talents, and again, how to kind of spread the best practices. So network was first, but then, you have the community, but how to make sure that this community is alive and active and they learn from each other. So something should sparkle that and kick this off. So that's why PreSales Talks was this kickoff event for the whole pre-sales network.
So tell us more about what PreSales Talks was. How many days was it? What type of events? How many people? Maybe give us a broad overview and then we'll dig into it.
I would say that we overachieved my personal expectations. I would say that was 5 days of virtual events. So each day we had at least 3-4 sessions, and as well as some workshops and more practical exercises for the teams. The sessions got overbooked the day we announced them, literally, maybe the next day we announced them. And the whole event was structured in a way that it basically followed the sales cycle in 5 days. So first day, we talked more about qualification. Second day, we talked more about how you do the discovery of the client, how you actually prepare the proposal that will be winnable. Then there was a specific day when we talked about our recent wins, especially those wins, those clients that got signed during 2020, which were signed, of course, in a different way. And I would say those sessions, they were very honest because we didn't want to make the sales event out of that. It was not about promoting the service, look how great we did, but more about tell us the story, how difficult it was, and tell us about the challenges. And we tried to make sure that each session was not just one person talking, but that was the team effort. So, for example, this account, let's listen to the account executive, to the solution architect, let's listen to the pre-sales consultant who was there. So let's listen to all of them because they all have different perspective how it won, how we passed the procurement, how we actually negotiated the actual work that we will deliver. And that was the specific day where we talked about post-sales. Okay, but let's call our customer success leaders and ask them. So that was this great deal that was solved, how it is doing right now. And there was also plenty of insights kind of translating. And of course, for people, many of them signed up for all sessions. Some were just signing up for a specific day that they were interested in. Judging by the statistics, I can tell that we actually reached out to the whole spectrum of levels and all different organizations within SoftServe. So, well, obviously from account executives and pre-sales, up to the customer success leaders, project management, delivery teams, marketing teams, all those internal organizations were brought together. So that was a success for sure.
Congratulations on that event. How long did it take to plan?
We got the idea in September and started the active planning during the October. So I would say 4 weeks for sure. There was the org team, and what they did great was actually, again, the way the pre-sales engineer thinks about let's have different streams. Let's run all those things in parallel so that you have the team that is dedicated to day 2, team that is dedicated to day 4. We also have a great internal team at SoftServe and the whole separate organization, which is called SoftServe University, that is developing different learning programs for us and for the clients. And this is actually also added to our knowledge because we knew that we can count on them and we can call on for their support to help us to plan all that thing remotely because it was not something that we do daily. That's why, again, if you know people who know people who know people, you can distribute the work evenly and achieve it within 4 weeks.
That's a lot to do in 4 weeks. What was some of the feedback?
The feedback was definitely positive because and we are measuring NPS. So our net promoter score was more than 80, which is again for such event and for close to 1,000 participants. I would say we did good. I was surprised how everybody found something in some of the sessions because some of the sessions were very focused. For example, if you're a regular project manager and you're joining the RFP session, you may find it a little bit too boring. But for those who are actually dealing with those RFPs daily, well, that was the topic and very, interactive session. For those who never tried pre-sales in real life, we had those role-playing games. That's why I would say the agenda was diverse. Maybe that was the reason why we reached out to so many people. For now, the lessons learned is that the next pre-sales talk, we are planning it for February, won't be that packed because the major feedback we got is like, okay, I wish I kind of visited all the sessions, but no way you can make it if you're still maintaining the daily job. So that's why next session will be a little bit probably focused and less intense in content.
Was there any feedback that shocked you or surprised you? And maybe necessarily not feedback. Is there something that you thought was going to go a certain way and it didn't go according to plan and you're going to make that adjustment for the next one?
Sure, there were those feedbacks and those expectations that were either missed or achieved. So one of the lessons learned is that we had a plan to have this role game that implied that there will be the repetitive team of people coming day 1, day 2, day 3, and of this continuous commitment. And we were losing people over time, obviously, because even myself, I cannot commit that I will be available within this specific time every day. So that was one of the lessons learned. If we have some commitments, let's make them more focused. And we also we did all that with Zoom. So we experimented with different formats. For example, they have this webinar setting that the audience doesn't see each other. And there is like a meeting setting when the audience can see each other and can interact with each other besides interacting with the folks on the screen. And we thought that, if you have like more than 100 participants in this meeting session, there will be people who don't press mute. There will be people just with cameras and why? But apparently people would like to see each other as well, because in webinar, it feels a little bit lonely when you see just whoever is presenting and cannot and just like alone in the room. So lots of lessons learned based on that feedback with the formats and definitely adjusting it next year.
This is so great. And this is why I wanted to bring you on, because I think that so many people, leaders face this type of pre-sales awareness problem within their organization. I mean, your conversation proves that you could be a 9,000 person company and still have this type of problem, right? And so my hope, and I know this is your hope too, is that people will hear this and be like, wow, that's amazing that SoftServe is doing that. And I want to do that within my company. I really like that. I want to ask you, what's next? It sounds like you're doing another one in February, which is fantastic. But what else is happening in 2021?
Next one in February, we are also actively looking for the external speakers. So if anyone is interested to participate and to tell their stories in pre-sales, we have a variety of subjects we are interested in, definitely please reach out. Besides that, just to mark the end of this notorious year, we are planning, and we already actually launched the nomination, we are having so-called Pre-Sales Heroes Awards. This is, again, internal corporate type of awards, and it's not just for those who have the title of pre-sales engineer or engagement manager. So it's for everyone. And it does have the individual nomination, it does have the team nomination, and the pre-sales network committee will be selecting that. It has both goals. It also calls out for the new folks, but also gives, I would say, participation for the pre-sales network that we eventually gathered.
I'd love to hear the results on how that goes. It's going to be great. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about this topic that you'd want to share with the audience?
We talked a lot about those practicalities, like this is what we did, this was the type of the events that we launched. And this is just something that worked in our particular company. I guess overall, whatever company you're working in, whether this is the startup of just a few folks or this is a larger company, just think about this networking effect. Networking is something that will bring you a long way, especially right now. So when there is no more those ad hoc bumping into each other in the offices and less travel for those folks who are remote, that's why this seeing network everywhere. And that was something that actually became more and more obvious to me, that even when we were looking into this, who applied for the pre-sales network, who we've seen in the event, there were actually those kind of three circles, three major, if you say, clusters of folks to whom we are connected. The first ones were obviously our champions, those who wanted to speak up, who wanted to share their stories, who wanted to talk about the lessons learned, and who were basically our promoters. The second circle, maybe not that active, but deal with them actively every day. It's your peers in customer success teams, it's your peers in marketing, maybe sales. So those you would like actually to share your beliefs and to know you. So basically for them, you're more explaining how you work, maybe getting their feedback. And then this third circle was actually a very inspiring thing to discover, is those junior staff and younger associates who are either looking after some new career in their lives or simply curious enough to come up, say, well, I know nothing about pre-sales, but I'd like to learn more. Those are probably kind of the very good circle to maintain the close contact with, because this is where your next generation comes from.
That was a great last question. So thanks for providing that. Halyna, I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. Before we sign off, I do have two questions for you. The first one is, what is your favorite thing about the pre-sales role?
You probably heard me saying a lot of times this time was about diversity and this whole how diverse this profession is. So you're dealing with different people, you're dealing with different clients, you're maintaining this, I would say, you're living this ever-changing environment every day. That's why, if you ask me, well, diversity for sure, diversity of work.
What advice do you have for people who want to make a career in pre-sales?
Here, definitely, not to quote, but be curious. And be curious in other people, in other services, in other things that is being going on in your organization. So make a habit to learn and to talk to somebody new outside your typical network. And right now, with all those tools, not sure if you're getting that from Office 365, they're having this monthly digest of your email habits or something. And it shows you your circle of networks and are there any new people appearing in your daily working emails and how many of them are actually there. And if you spend your life in a bubble of 5, 10, even 50, but similar repetitive contacts at work, well, I guess you may be missing something. That's why, since pre-sales is again about integration, connecting, and doing a lot of those introduction and rephrasing, well, you know what I mean. I would say that tracking your new connections, well, formally, informally, you name it, is probably a good idea if you'd like to succeed here.
Great advice, Halyna. I didn't even know about that with Office 360. That sounds really cool. I'll have to look into that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the insights. Very actionable. And I hope those that are listening can go back to their organizations and try to propose something similar. So for those who are interested in potentially presenting at your pre-sales talks in February, can they reach out to you on our Slack channel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Slack channel, LinkedIn, for sure. And James, thank you for doing what you're doing, because as I'm saying, Pre-Sales Collective, that was the thing that's not just connected two of us, but also gave a lot of this external thinking, because I recommended it to my team. They are joining the Slack channel and they're actually discovering the whole world behind our, even though our bubble right now is a little bit bigger than it was just in the beginning of the year, it's still a bubble. So I love how you actually enable this whole network effect.
It means a lot. It's been a lot of fun. It's great to see the impact of the community growing. Thanks again for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, James.
All right, PreSales Collective, I was not lying. What an interesting episode. I'll be the first to admit that I had not heard of this concept prior to Halyna reaching out to me and have been just fascinated by this. I really, really enjoyed hearing her perspective on the event. It's great to hear that the event was viewed as a success. They're doing another one in February, and there's also some actionable takeaways from it. The one thing about this is that pre-sales is the integrated function within the organization. In talking to Halyna, she believes that the pre-sales team is how you speak the same language with your customer. And really, the pre-sales team and the awareness of the pre-sales team is not necessarily about promotion, but how we get all the other functions working together to, again, affect the end customer for a better customer experience. One thing that she talked about that I really liked was raising awareness in your 3 circles. Circle 1 is your ambassadors and your champions. And those are your pre-sales teams and people that are invested. And circle number 2 are your peers. But circle number 3 are those that are maybe junior staff or potential pre-sales associates, and how it can raise awareness and build your pipeline of future pre-sales professionals. I really enjoyed today's episode. Love the perspective. I'm going to go out there and challenge people to say, hey, this sounds like something I should do at my organization. If that's you, please reach out to me. I'm glad to help. Be love to do this with PreSales Collective more routinely. PreSales Collective has been invited to speak to a couple of organizations about the work that we're doing, and we would love to help promote the brand, the role of pre-sales within organizations. All right, PreSales Collective, as always, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like, share, give me some feedback. You know I love feedback. Otherwise, we will see you next week.